Donna, great job. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and thank you all for coming. I want to thank Rabbi Dorsch and everyone at the shul. This certainly was not needed. Thank you anyway, and those of you at home. I want to thank Gail and my family for a year ago when the opportunity came to serve at the shul here, that they said, yes, go serve. So we did. I always find that if I look in the Torah helps me express my feelings. And this morning I looked at Nasso, and if you turn to page 803 in your Chumash, Numbers chapter 6, I want to spend some time in the Torah, and I think the Torah this morning will best help me explain how I feel. So if you would join me, please. Again, if you're looking at Safari or whatever, it's Numbers chapter 6, 21, and we're going to go into the next verses in a moment. What's fascinating about this portion of Numbers is that if you're reading along, as Rabbi Dorsch said, it's all about the Nazarite, the rules and regulations of being a Nazarite. So you can see verse 21, such is the obligation of a Nazarite, and it goes on. And then for us, we're turning a page, and you have this new topic, sort of out of the blue. It just, boom, it's in there. And as you can see, we're in Numbers chapter 6, verse 22. This is the Birkat HaKohanim. This is the priestly benediction, which you know, if you come to services, all the time it's offered at special occasions. And this is what I want to spend a few moments in, and this is what really spoke to me this morning. So I'd like to just take a few moments and break it down a little bit and see perhaps if we can wrestle with the text a little bit and have some different ideas of what it means. So the preface of this is verse 22. The Lord spoke to Moses, speak to Aaron and his sons, thus you shall bless the people, Israel, say to them. So that's the setup of this Birkat HaKohanim. And of course, well, let's look at it. The advantage of in the Chumash is that you can look at the whole thing. So you have three verses here, 24, 25, and 26. You're all familiar with this, I presume. Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ye'adonai panav elecha v'yikonecha, Yisadonai panav elecha v'seim lecha shalom. Now let's take a deep dive into the verses. So, first of all, please note that God's name is the second word in each of the three verses. So that's number one, Yivarecha Adonai, Ya'er Adonai, Yisa Adonai. So the focus here is God. That's the primary focus here. Secondly, of interest too, is that verse 24 is three words, verse 25 is 5, and verse 26 is 7. So you have a little bit of a build-up, a crescendo within this little blessing. Now, I'd like to talk about the meaning of the words themselves, and just a little interesting twist on the words. So we're in verse 24, Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Oh, and the translation is what? May the Lord bless you and protect you. Anybody have any thoughts about that? I'd say that one is pretty straightforward. All right. If you have any thoughts, let me know. All right. Now verse 5 is where I found it got interesting. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha. Ya'er means what from the word or? Hebrew speakers out there is a light, of course. So Ya'er would be to illumine or shine. Ya'er Adonai panav, what's panav? Face. And that's why we say in English countenance, or we would, so what is the meaning of this verse? How would you translate it? Now, interestingly, our translation here, the Lord deal kindly and be graciously with you, but there are other translations where you might say, make his face, make God's face to shine, illumine and be gracious to you. So what I'm trying to do, and hopefully we can do it together, is try to get a sense of what were our ancestors trying to do with this verse. What methodology were they using? Where were they trying to go with this? So, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yikuneka. May God's face shine upon you, illumine you, light up you, and be gracious to you. Why doesn't the translation say that? Face? Just keep that in the back of your mind. God's face illumine you, shine upon you, etc. It doesn't. It says, the Lord deal kindly and graciously with you. By the way, if you have the Chumash in front of you, look down right under where it says 25. Right under the Hebrew there. And what does it say? Literally, make his face to shine, illumine. So I'm not that far off. So here you have literally the words say, may the face of God shine upon you and be gracious to you. Now what's interesting is that, again, we're in verse 26 now, looking at the Hebrew, and the verb changes. So we go from Ya'er, which is illumine, God's face should shine upon you, to Yisa Adonai panav elecha. So the same words are repeated again, Adonai panav elecha, and this is also, Yisa comes from the root Nasso, that may God's face be placed over you and grant you shalom. Once again, the translation doesn't talk about face. The translation says, the Lord bestow his favor upon you and grant you peace. And once again, if you look in the middle of the page, where it says, deal kindly, again, literally, make his face shine. So the phrase which is repeated twice is, Adonai panav elecha, God's face upon you, which is really sweet if you think about it. But we have a problem in Judaism. What would the problem be? Talking about God's face. Yeah, the fancy word is incorporeal, but we don't believe that God has a body. We believe that God is a power, a force, an entity, but I would say faceless in this regard. Nevertheless, the words say face. So I ask you, what were our ancestors millennia ago trying to say? What emotion were they trying to get us to, or what theological place were they taking us to by using these words? So I just ask you if anybody has any thoughts or ideas. Well, don't be shy. Go ahead.
Well, they're saying what should be done. Bless and protect you, and then they're telling you how
to do it. Okay. Nice. And anyone else? I mean, we hear this all the time. It's nice to get that blessing. Rachel. Thanks, Bob. And you have to be loud with the Mass.
Maybe they were trying to have God relate to people. And so they were trying to bring God closer to people so they could relate, they could see his face.
Okay, very nice. So, and again, you think about this. We're moving right along, but think about it if you have any thoughts. Here's what I thought, and again, follow me through this. As I was working through this, I pictured a spotlight. So if you could all imagine a spotlight that's shining down, I feel like I have one on me now, but just a spotlight. And the first verse is, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may the Lord bless you and keep you. All of a sudden, wherever we are, there's a beam of light that's shining. That's the first one. That's the first blessing. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yikunecha. That beam of light is coming close to us. And that beam of light, which is the essence of God, is kind of shining our way. And so we have that reflection. We can feel the light coming closer. And finally, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And finally, that beam of light, which we've seen, now comes to us. And it falls directly on us. So the spotlight of God's essence is upon us at the end. And you feel ultimately a sense of what? When I was doing the translation, I didn't say peace, I said serenity. Just a feeling of everything's going to be okay. A little side note. When I was a kid growing up, I mentioned on Shavuot there were some difficulties at home, and finding emotional safety was a challenge sometimes. One time, I must have been 16 or 17, by myself, somehow I ended up at my grandmother's place, Aleha HaShalom. Knocked on the door, she was home. And when I came in, I had this overwhelming sense of being at peace. Just an overwhelming sense that everything was going to be all right. That whatever else was going on in the outside world, in my grandmother's presence, in her apartment, I knew she would take care of me. And I think that that's the feeling that this is trying to tell us. That when we are in the presence of God, and when that spotlight of God is on us, that's how we feel. Just that, whatever is bugging us, it's going to be okay. Just that feeling of complete, and shalom, the word shalom comes from shalem, it means completeness. Just a complete feeling of everything's going to be all right. And so I think in many ways, this blessing was meant to take us there. That ultimately, that sense of peace and sense of shalom. So if it's helpful to you, picture it as a spotlight of God's essence shining upon us. As you know, the blessing comes from the Kohanim and from rabbis. And in the commentary, the rabbis are very clear to say that it's not our blessing per se. So you're not being blessed by Slamovitz or Dorsch or Lewis, whatever. We're the conduits. We just transfer the blessing from God to you. So it's not us per se, or I'll speak for myself. I'm not a holy with a capital H. A regular person, but nevertheless, we're the conduits of that. At the same time, the rabbis do say also that when you say the blessings, we get a little bit of a spiritual kickback, so to speak. That when that spotlight is on somebody, and we symbolically would be off to the side saying the prayer, and the spotlight is going to the person, but we get a little bit of the light. We get a little bit of that light also. So for me, my time here has felt like that the opportunity to be a rabbi of the shul, even though I sit back there, seat 28, whatever, over there, it was nice to come up and have the rabbinic opportunities to be with people for a whole gamut of life experiences and do it in a spiritual manner and know that a little bit of that spirituality comes back. So I've always seen my role as being a conduit as much as I can of God to people. And I want to thank everyone, the staff. Thank you, and Marty, and Heather, Debbie, Aram, everybody for the past year. So it has been a wonderful privilege to do that. And if I could, if it's all right, I'd like to ask Rabbi Dorsch to come here, Rabbi Lewis, and I'd like to offer you the Birkat HaKohanim. All right. Well,
we're going to bless you.
Well, we'll kind of bless each other. So if you'd like to rise, please, everyone, and those of you all at home. And I hope the spotlight shines on all of us. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yikunecha, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Amen. Thank you.
Stick around, put your mask on.
Okay.